In this video, we're going to look at a different kind of method within a struct. So I'm going to create a struct. I'm going to call this inputs. And in my struct, there are going to be several different variables. So I'm going to get some input from the user to get a set or an array of integers that we are going to manipulate to find the average. So that's information I'm going to get from the user. Once that information is passed in order to find the average, I need to total all of those numbers, and I need to find out how many numbers they entered. So to do that, I'm going to create some variables that I'm going to assign right now. So for the amount of numbers, I'm going to say right now I'm going to set that to 0. So that's not something I'm going to pass into this struct. I'm already going to assign it, so that's not something I need to give to this struct. I'm also going to create a variable for the average of all of those numbers, and I'm going to make this a float because I want to have several decimal places. Okay, I'm going to do this for now, and then it's going to throw an error, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So now I'm going to create a method, and that method is going to find the average, and that average will be returned. So I'm going to return that average value once I've summed all of them together. So I'm going to create a new variable called sum. I'm going to take all of those values in the list called numbers, and there's this really nice command in Swift that'll allow me to add all of the numbers together. So it's saying take the element 0, start from 0, and add all of them together. So convenient. Okay, so let sum equal the numbers.reduce. I need to know how many numbers are in that list. So I'm going to now use amount of numbers equals. So I'm going to count how many values are in the array that was passed in from the user. I'm going to then find the average of all of those numbers. I'm going to, actually I don't need that. I'm going to take the sum, so all of the numbers added together, and divide it by the amount of numbers. And what I'm finally going to return is that average value. So that's the float value that I'm going to return. Okay, let's see, make sure everything is okay. So now, here's the error I was talking to you about that will come up eventually. Cannot assign to property self is immutable. In other words, we're saying that this function is changing values that are inside of this struct. These values are mutating or changing. So what that means is we need to be more specific about the type of method or the type of function we're creating. So because this function is changing some of the values that were defined in the struct, we need to call this a mutating function. So that's just declaring this is not just a regular function or a regular method. This method is actually changing some of the variables that were declared inside of the struct. Small detail, but something really important. Okay, we've created our type. So like our turtle, this is our inputs type. Now what we're going to do is get some input from the user, and we're going to find the average of the numbers that they wanted. So we're going to create a new array that will pass into the struct. This is going to be an array of integers from the user, and right now it's just empty. I'm going to ask the user how many numbers would you like to average? I will make this nice for the user, terminator, and oops. Okay. Now let's get the input. the user so that we can loop that many times and ask them that many times how many numbers do they want and then what numbers are those. So let's make this look good. So we're going to say for I in 1 to the amount of numbers that they wanted. So change that to quantity. Let's unwrap that, and because we're converting that, we need to unwrap that as well. So we're going to say however many times they want it, we're going to loop that many times. So we're going to say print, please enter number I. So now we'll actually use that value I to make it look good. Terminate again. And then we're going to get that information from the user and append that to the list, or to the array called user nums. Convert it to an integer because we create an array of integers, and then unwrap it. Okay, let's create a type of inputs. So let's just call it input 1. Not very creative, but that is a type of inputs. And what I see that needs to be entered is numbers, because that's the only variable that has not been assigned a value. So you can see here it's telling you need to input some value for numbers. So let's say, okay, numbers is going to be the user nums that we got from the user. Then we'll finally print the average of our numbers is, and then we're going to say input 1 dot find average. I needed to make this var instead of let, because we need to be able to do stuff to it. So now it should be happy. So by making this a variable, that allows me to change it by finding the average. Okay, let's ask the user how many numbers they want. Let's just do 5 for the sake of this video. Let's say 3, 2, 4, 5. Now notice it's making this really nice. Please enter number 1, enter number 2, 3, 4. That's what this part is doing, is it's putting in those values there to make it a little bit easier to read. And let's put a 1 there. And then the average of your numbers is 3. Okay, that's the second video.